On Father's Day, my son gave me a crumpled $1.50 lottery ticket and gave his father-in-law a $22,000 Dubai trip. In front of 30 people, he humiliated me, but 1 week later, luck came to me. When the truth was revealed, there were 67 missed calls non-stop, but I didn't call back. Instead, I prepared a video call that would give him a lesson he'd never forget. Hello everyone who made it here. Before we continue, comment like if you've ever received a gift that made you feel small. If you're ready to hear how this unfolds, subscribe now, you won't want to miss that video call. This story includes creative elements crafted for impact and meaning. Let's continue. I'm James Sullivan, 55 years old. 2 months ago, on Father's Day, at Edward Thornton's mansion, in front of 30 guests, my son gave his father-in-law a $22,000 European vacation and handed me a crumpled lottery ticket worth $1.50. I teach philosophy at UNC. I've spent most of my adult life trying to help 19-year-olds understand Aristotle and Kant, which is a little like trying to explain color to someone who's never seen. But that's the job. It pays $68,000 a year, which in Chapel Hill means you're comfortable but not impressive. And at Edward Thornton's house, if you're not impressive, you're invisible. The dinner was at 6 on a Sunday evening. Edward's place is what real estate agents call a distinguished property. 8,000 square feet of brick and columns on 3 acres, the kind of house that makes you check your shoes before you step inside. The dining room could seat 20 comfortably, but he'd set up the table for 32, which meant elbows touching and conversations overlapping in that forced, cheerful way people talk when they're trying to prove they're having a good time. I sat near the middle, wedged between one of Ashley's cousins and a man whose name I'd already forgotten. Rachel, my daughter, was at the far end, with the younger crowd, Ashley's friends from her junior league days, their husbands in pastel button-downs and expensive watches. She caught my eye once and gave me a small smile, the kind that says, "I see you, and I'm here." It was the only thing that felt real. Edward held court at the head of the table, 60 years old, silver-haired, with the kind of tan you only get from playing golf 4 times a week. He'd made his money in manufacturing something about industrial parts, the details of which he'd explained to me twice, and I'd forgotten twice, and retired 5 years ago to focus on what matters. Which, as far as I could tell, meant reminding everyone within earshot how much he was worth. "James," he said halfway through the meal, his voice cutting through the chatter. "How's the philosophy department treating you? Still teaching kids to question everything?" "Something like that," I said. "Must be rewarding," he said in a tone that suggested it wasn't. "All those young minds soaking up wisdom. Of course, I always thought the real education happens out in the world. Building something, creating jobs. But I suppose not everyone's cut out for that." A few people laughed. Not mean laughter exactly. Just the kind you hear when someone with money makes a joke and everyone wants to stay on his good side. I didn't respond. I've learned over the years that silence is sometimes the only dignified option. Ashley, Chad's wife, sat beside her father, playing the role of gracious hostess. She's beautiful in the way that money makes people beautiful: perfect hair, perfect skin, perfect teeth. She refilled Edward's wine glass and smiled at me like I was a distant acquaintance she'd once met at a charity event and couldn't quite place. Chad sat to Edward's right. My son. 32 years old, wearing a tailored blazer that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. He looked relaxed, confident, like he belonged there in a way I never would. When dessert was served, some kind of lemon tart with gold leaf on top, because of course there was gold leaf, Edward tapped his glass with a fork. "I want to take a moment," he said, "to thank everyone for being here. Family means everything." He glanced at Chad. And I'm grateful to have such a thoughtful son-in-law. Chad stood grinning. Actually, speaking of gratitude, Ashley and I wanted to do something special today. He pulled an envelope from his jacket pocket and handed it to Edward. Edward opened it slowly, milking the moment. His eyes widened. Chad, this is how? 3 weeks in Europe, Chad announced. Paris, Rome, Barcelona, business-class flights, 5-star hotels, all expenses covered. You've worked hard your whole life. You deserve it. The room erupted in applause. Edward stood and hugged Chad, clapping him on the back like he'd just won a championship. Ashley beamed. People around the table murmured their approval. So generous. What a wonderful gift. How thoughtful. Edward looked at me across the table. See, James, this is what I mean. Building something, taking care of family. I nodded. What else could I do? Then Chad turned to me. And Dad, he said, reaching into his other pocket. He pulled out a crumpled piece of paper and tossed it onto the table in front of me. It skidded across the white linen and stopped next to my water glass. A Powerball ticket. $1.50, Chad said, grinning wider now. I figured you could use a little luck. The room exploded into laughter. Real laughter this time, loud and unrestrained. Someone clapped me on the back. Edward chuckled and shook his head. Ashley covered her mouth with her hand, but I could see the amusement in her eyes. I picked up the ticket. The edges were torn, the numbers smudged. It looked like he'd found it in his car and remembered at the last second that he hadn't gotten me anything. $22,000 versus $1.50. 30 witnesses. I looked down the table at Rachel. She wasn't laughing. She was watching me with an expression I couldn't quite read, something between sadness and anger. She saw what they'd done, and she didn't look away. I folded the ticket and slipped it into my jacket pocket. Thanks, I said quietly. The conversation moved on. Someone asked Edward about his travel dates. Ashley started talking about restaurants in Paris, and I sat there in a room full of people feeling like a ghost. When the plates were cleared and people started moving to the living room for coffee, I excused myself. The bathroom was down the hall, all marble and brass fixtures. I stood at the sink and looked at myself in the mirror. Gray hair, lines around my eyes, a tired man in a jacket that was 10 years old holding a lottery ticket like it was a punchline instead of a gift. I needed 60 seconds to remember who I was before I became invisible in my own son's eyes. 2 years ago, a drunk driver ran a red light on Highway 54 and nearly took Rachel from me. I got the call at 11:30 on a Thursday night. I was in my study halfway through grading a stack of essays on Plato's cave allegory when my phone lit up with a number I didn't recognize. Mr. Sullivan. The voice was calm, professional, trained to deliver bad news without inflection. This is Officer Martinez with Chapel Hill Police. Your daughter Rachel has been in a serious accident. She's being transported to UNC Hospital. You need to come now. The drive is a blur. I remember running 2 red lights. I remember my hands shaking on the steering wheel. I remember thinking over and over, please let her be alive. The emergency room was bright and loud, machines, beeping voices calling out medical terms. I didn't understand the sharp smell of disinfectant. A nurse met me at the intake desk, her scrubs marked with someone else's blood. Spinal trauma, she said. Pelvic fracture, internal bleeding. She's in surgery now. I don't know how long I stood there. Time stopped making sense. Rachel spent 2 weeks in the ICU. 2 weeks of tubes and monitors, her face so pale she looked like a photograph of herself. I sat beside her bed every night listening to machines breathe for her, and I talked. About nothing, really. Campus gossip, the weather. A student who'd argued that Kant's categorical imperative was basically just a vibe. I talked because the doctors said she might hear me, because I needed her to know she wasn't alone. Claire had been gone for 20 years by then. Breast cancer, quick and brutal, when Rachel was 8 and Chad was 12. So there was no one else. No partner to spell me at the hospital. No one to bring me coffee or tell me to go home and sleep. Just me and the sound of the ventilator night after night. Rachel woke up on day 16. Groggy, confused, in pain so intense she couldn't speak without crying. But alive. The surgeries came next. 3 of them over 8 months. Spinal fusion first, then pelvic reconstruction, then a second spinal procedure when the first one didn't hold. After that, 18 months of physical therapy, learning to walk without a cane, learning to trust her body again, learning to live with the kind of chronic pain that never fully goes away. She did it. She went back to nursing, back to her 12-hour shifts at UNC Hospital, back to the life she'd built. But recovery isn't free. The bills started arriving while she was still unconscious. Thick envelopes with codes and numbers that didn't make sense until you added them up. The insurance company covered $400,000. It sounds like a fortune until you see what's left. $188,000. I tried. I went to 3 banks. I filled out applications, sat across from loan officers in cheap suits who looked at my tax returns and shook their heads. $68,000 a year. No assets except the house my father Robert and my mother Helen left me when they died, a 3-bedroom colonial in a quiet neighborhood paid off, worth maybe $550,000 if the market was good. The banks said no. Too much risk. Not enough collateral they could liquidate quickly. I was sitting in the hospital cafeteria on a Tuesday afternoon, staring at a collections notice when Chad found me. "Dad?" He slid into the chair across from me, looking crisp in a charcoal suit. "I heard about the bills." I looked up. "Word travels fast." "Small town." He glanced at the paper in my hand. "How much?" "188. He didn't flinch. "I can help." "Chad, I don't. Family loan. I've got liquidity. You need it. Simple." I should have asked questions. I should have asked why, what the terms were, whether this was really the best option. But I was exhausted, drowning, and my son was offering me a rope. "What's the interest rate?" "We'll figure it out. Family rate. Don't worry about it." 3 days later, I sat in Chad's downtown office, glass walls, leather chairs, a view of Franklin Street. He slid a stack of papers across the desk. "Just sign where I've marked," he said. My hands were shaking. I signed. I didn't read the fine print. I didn't ask to take the contract home and review it. I just wanted Rachel's bills paid. I wanted the collection calls to stop. I wanted to breathe. Chad transferred the money that afternoon. The hospital confirmed receipt the next morning. It wasn't until 2 months later that I actually read the loan agreement. I'd filed it in a drawer, telling myself I'd deal with it later. Later came when the first payment notice arrived. 38% APR. I stared at the number, certain it was a typo. But it wasn't. 38% annual interest, compounding monthly. And there on page 4, in language I'd been too tired to read, collateral listed as my house. The house my parents left me. The house I grew up in. If I defaulted, Chad could take it. I called him. "Chad, this interest rate. Market rate for high-risk private loans. High risk, I'm your father. And I'm extending credit to someone 3 banks rejected. You want the money or not? Because I can call the loan right now. 30-day notice, full repayment. It's in the contract." I didn't say anything. "That's what I thought," he said, and hung up. I made the payments. Every month, $8,500. I watched the principal barely move, while the interest piled up like snow in a blizzard. Driving away from Edward's mansion after Father's Day, I thought about that ticket in my pocket. I'd nearly lost Rachel once. To save her, I'd put everything my parents left me at risk, and Chad knew exactly what he'd done. The house was quiet when I got home, the kind of quiet that used to comfort me before it started feeling like loneliness. I dropped my keys on the kitchen counter and stood there for a moment listening to the hum of the refrigerator, the tick of the clock on the wall. No footsteps upstairs, no television murmuring in the next room, just silence. Claire had been gone for 2 decades, but sometimes I still expected to hear her voice. Rachel visited when she could Sunday dinners the occasional weeknight, but she had her own life now. The house was mine, all mine. And some nights that felt less like freedom and more like an echo. It was 11:30. I should have gone to bed. Instead, I wandered into my study. The study had been my father's before it was mine. He'd built the bookshelves himself, floor to ceiling, oak-stained dark. My own collection had filled in the gaps over the years. Philosophy texts, student papers, coffee-stained copies of the Republic. That's when I noticed it. A folder. Manila letter-sized, sitting on the corner of my desk beneath a stack of books. I didn't remember putting it there. The label read SFA Client Files, Sullivan Financial Advisory, Chad's company. I opened it. Inside were contracts, loan agreements, 8 of them, each one neatly printed, signed, and notarized. Borrower Daniel and Margaret Johnson loan, amount $53,000, interest rate 39% APR, the Johnsons. Our neighbors. 2 streets over. The next one, borrower Aisha Williams loan, amount $72,000, interest rate 40% APR, collateral bakery equipment, future revenue. Aisha ran a small bakery on Franklin Street. I'd bought croissants there a dozen times. The third was Dean Anderson's daughter, $38,000 at 35%. I kept reading. 5 more contracts. All the same. People borrowing money at rates that would bury them. Interest compounding every month. Collateral agreements that gave Chad the right to seize everything. My son wasn't a financial advisor. He was a loan shark. I pulled out my phone and started taking pictures. Every page, every signature, every clause that allowed Chad to destroy people's lives 1 percentage point at a time. When I finished, I put the contracts back exactly where I'd found them. If Chad had left this here accident or arrogance, he'd made a mistake. Because now I had proof. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in my study until sunrise thinking about all the people trapped in his system. People like me. People who'd had no choice but to say yes because the alternative was losing everything. The week that followed felt surreal. I taught my classes. I graded papers. I smiled at colleagues and pretended everything was fine. But all I could think about were those contracts. Saturday afternoon, I was at my desk with a red pen and student essays when my phone rang. Rachel. Hey, sweetheart. Dad. Her voice had that teasing edge. Quick question. Did you ever check that lottery ticket? I laughed, short, bitter. Rachel, it's a $1.50 Powerball ticket. You don't know that. Come on, check it. For me. I'm working. Dad. Her tone shifted firm now. Check the ticket. The universe owes you one. I sighed. Fine. Hold on. I walked to the coat closet by the front door. My jacket from Sunday was still hanging there. I reached into the inside pocket. The ticket was still there, tucked against the lining. Wrinkled ink, slightly smudged. Okay, I said, walking back to my desk. I'm checking. I opened my laptop and pulled up the Powerball website. The winning numbers from last Sunday were listed at the top. 07-14-21-35-49. Powerball 18, I held the ticket up to the screen. First number 7, match. Second number 14, match. My hand started to shake. Third number 21, match. Fourth number 35, match. I couldn't breathe. Fifth number 49, match. Powerball 18, match. All 6 numbers. Dad. Rachel's voice sounded far away. What's happening? I couldn't speak. I opened another tab, then another, different sites. The numbers were the same everywhere. Jackpot $100 million. I set the phone down. I could hear Rachel calling my name, but I couldn't answer. I just sat there staring at the screen at the ticket at 6 numbers that had somehow rewritten everything. The same week I discovered my son was running a predatory lending operation. The same week I'd been reminded publicly that I was worth exactly $1.50. I sat there for 2 hours. I didn't call Rachel back. I didn't tell anyone. I just sat in the room my father had built, thinking about 30 years of making myself smaller, of letting Chad and Edward treat me like I didn't matter. And then I did the only thing that made sense. I called my sister Susan. Susan was already at Café Dryad when I arrived Sunday morning, sitting in the back corner where no one from campus would see us. She had 2 cups in front of her, one half-empty one still steaming. She'd been waiting. When she looked up and saw my face, her expression shifted from curiosity to concern. What happened? I slid into the chair across from her and pulled out my phone. I need to show you something. I opened the photo gallery and handed it to her. She scrolled through the images slowly. Her face went pale. 8 contracts, I said quietly. All with illegal interest rates. She looked up. James, where did you get these? Chad left them at my house, in a folder. I don't know if it was an accident or if he wanted me to see them. Either way, I have them now. Susan kept scrolling. The Johnsons, Aisha Williams, Dean Anderson's daughter. 8 families drowning in debt that should never have existed. Jesus, she whispered. There's more, I said. A lot more. But I need to know something first. You said on the phone that you'd been carrying something since Easter. What did you mean? She set the phone down and closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them, they were wet. I should have told you sooner. Tell me now. She took a breath. Chad came to my house in April. He needed to use my printer, said his was broken. He left his phone on my kitchen counter while he was in the other room. She paused. A text came in. I glanced at it without thinking, and then I couldn't stop looking. She pulled out her own phone and opened her messages. She scrolled back through months of screenshots, then handed it to me. The conversation was between Chad and someone saved in Susan's phone as V. I scrolled up. Message after message going back 8 months. Flirtatious at first, then explicit. Plans to meet at hotels. Complaints about Ashley, how she was boring, how she didn't understand him, how she cared more about appearances than their marriage. And then I saw it. The message from 3 months ago. Chad. When the old man defaults, I'll have the house. Then we're set. Ashley's outlived her usefulness. Just a few more months. V. You're terrible. I love it. Chad. She'll get half in the divorce, but that's fine. The house alone is worth $550,000. Dad's too proud to declare bankruptcy. He'll just keep paying until he can't. And when he can't, I foreclose. Easy money. I stared at the screen, reading it over and over. My son, planning to take my house, calling me the old man, talking about my financial ruin like it was a business strategy. Who's V? I asked, my voice flat. Vanessa, Susan said. His assistant? I looked her up after I saw the messages. And you didn't tell me. I wanted to. Her voice cracked. James, I swear I did, but I didn't know how. You were already dealing with so much, and I don't know what I thought. That maybe it would blow over. That maybe I was wrong to look. I'm so sorry. I handed her phone back. It's not your fault. It is, though. I should have said something. You're telling me now. That's what matters. She wiped her eyes. So what do we do? That's when I told her about the lottery ticket. Her reaction was almost funny, if anything about this could be funny. Her jaw dropped. She stared at me like I just said I was secretly an astronaut. You're kidding. I'm not. $100 million. 62 after taxes. She let out a long, shaky breath and leaned back in her chair. Okay, so you're rich. And Chad doesn't know. Nobody knows except you. And Rachel. She knows I checked the ticket. She doesn't know what it means yet. Susan leaned forward, her eyes suddenly fierce. James, this is your chance. You can fight back. I know. But you're going to need help. I nodded. That's why I called you. And that's why I'm meeting with Richard Patterson tomorrow morning. Monday morning, I sat across from Richard in his office, a converted Victorian on Rosemary Street, all hardwood floors and floor-to-ceiling bookshelves. We'd served on faculty committees together for years. I'd always liked him. Sharp mind, careful with his words, the kind of lawyer who thought 3 moves ahead. I handed him the folder, not the original I'd made copies, but every page, every signature, every clause that trapped people in debt they could never escape. He put on his reading glasses and started going through the documents. 5 minutes passed, then 10. He didn't say anything, just read occasionally, making notes on a yellow legal pad. Finally, he looked up. James, this exceeds the statutory cap. What? The interest rate. North Carolina General Statute 24-1.1 caps private lending rates at 30% for unlicensed lenders. Anything above that is criminal usury. He tapped the contract. 38%, 39%, 40%, all of these are void. Legally unenforceable. I felt something loosen in my chest. Are you sure? Positive. And it's not just civil. Your son could face criminal charges. Usury is a Class 1 misdemeanor in this state. If there's a pattern, and based on what I'm seeing here, there is, the Attorney General could pursue racketeering charges. What about my house, the collateral agreement? If the underlying loan is void, so is the collateral. He has no legal claim to your property. None. I sat back in my chair. No debt, no threat, no sword hanging over my head. There's more, Richard said. If he's done this to multiple people and you've documented at least 8, you could file a complaint with the AG's office. They'd open an investigation. Subpoenas, audits, the works. Other victims could file civil suits for damages. He could lose his business license. How long would that take? Months, maybe longer. These things don't move fast. I thought about the lottery ticket in my desk drawer, about the screenshots on Susan's phone, about Rachel and Ashley and all the families whose names were on those contracts. What do you want to do, James? Richard asked gently. I thought about Rachel in that hospital bed, about the years I'd spent making myself smaller, quieter, less, about the truth that needed daylight. I want justice, I said. But I want to do it the right way. Rachel met me at the UNC hospital cafeteria during her lunch break, the same cafeteria where Chad had offered me the loan 2 years earlier. She was still in her scrubs, navy blue, with a hospital ID clipped to her pocket. Her hair was pulled back in a ponytail, and she looked tired in the way that comes from 12-hour shifts spent keeping people alive. But when she saw me, she smiled, and for a moment the exhaustion lifted. "Hey, Dad." "Hey, sweetheart." We got hospital coffee, which is to say it tasted like burnt cardboard, and sat at a table near the window. Outside, students hurried between buildings, backpacks slung over shoulders, living lives that felt 1,000 miles away from where I was sitting. "You sounded weird on the phone," Rachel said. "What's going on?" So I told her everything: the lottery ticket, the $100 million, the folder of contracts I'd found, Chad's illegal lending operation, the texts Susan had shown me, Richard Patterson's confirmation that the loan was void, that Chad could face criminal charges. She listened without interrupting, her coffee going cold in her hands. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "Who knows?" she asked finally. "About what?" "All of it. The money, the investigation, everything. Just you and Susan. And Richard. Not Chad, not Ashley." "No." She nodded slowly. "Good. Keep it that way." "I plan to." She looked at me, and I saw something in her face I hadn't seen before. Not just concern, something harder, protective. "Promise me something, Dad." "What?" "Don't become like them." I reached across the table and took her hand. "Rachel, this isn't about revenge. It's about stopping him from hurting more people." "I know. But there's a line between justice and cruelty. Just don't cross it. Okay?" "I won't." She squeezed my hand. "Maybe it's time they learned what happens when you stop making yourself small." 2 weeks after Father's Day, Edward threw a bon voyage party. It was Sunday afternoon, golden light filtering through the trees in his backyard. The atmosphere was different this time, less formal than the Father's Day dinner, more celebratory. People milled around the patio with wine glasses and plates of appetizers, laughing and talking over the sound of jazz coming from speakers hidden in the garden. 25, maybe 30 people. Mostly the Thornton side of the family, Ashley's cousins, Edward's golf buddies, people from their country club. Kevin and Angela were there with Jake. Rachel had begged off, claiming a shift she couldn't trade. Edward stood near the outdoor fireplace, holding court with an iPad in his hand. He was showing people his itinerary: Paris for 5 days, then Rome, then Barcelona. 3 weeks of 5-star hotels and Michelin restaurants, all paid for by my son. "James," Edward called out when he saw me. "Come look at this. Chad found us a restaurant in Paris that's been on the waiting list for 2 years. 2 years, but somehow he pulled strings." I walked over, smiled, nodded at the screen showing some place with white tablecloths and gold chandeliers. "Impressive," I said. "That's what family does," Edward said, clapping Chad on the shoulder. "Takes care of each other." Ashley floated through the crowd in a white sundress, playing hostess. She refreshed drinks, laughed at jokes, touched people lightly on the arm. When she passed me, she smiled, polite, distant, the same smile you'd give a stranger at a cocktail party. Someone asked about my summer plans. "Reading mostly," I said. "Maybe some work around the house." Chad laughed from across the patio. "Dad's not the traveling type. More of a books and quiet kind of guy." A few people chuckled, the kind of laughter that's more about filling silence than finding something funny. I'd heard variations of this joke my entire adult life: the absent-minded professor, the man who lived in his head, the guy who'd rather read Kant than go to a baseball game. It used to bother me. Now it just felt like background noise. An hour into the party, Chad cornered me by the grill. Ashley was inside getting more wine. Edward was showing someone photos on his phone. No one was paying attention to us. "Dad!" Chad said, his voice low. Quick reminder, payments due next month while we're gone. $8,500. You'll have it right. I looked at him, really looked at him, at the expensive watch on his wrist, the tailored shirt, the easy confidence of someone who'd never once doubted he'd get what he wanted. I'll handle it, I said. Good. Because you know what happens if you don't. I know. He smiled, that same satisfied smile he'd had when he tossed the lottery ticket onto the table. Great. Just wanted to make sure we're on the same page. He walked away, back to the party, back to his wife and his father-in-law, and his carefully constructed image of success. And I stood there by the grill thinking about the LLC I'd formed 3 days ago. About the lottery claim I'd filed under that company's name. About the complaint sitting in Richard Patterson's office ready to be sent to the Attorney General. About all the ways Chad thought he had power over me and all the ways he was wrong. The party wound down as the sun started to set. People hugged Edward and wished him safe travels. Someone made a toast to family and adventure. Everyone raised their glasses. I raised mine too. Because in 3 weeks, when Chad and Edward were in Barcelona and Ashley was home alone, thinking she was in control, I was going to make a phone call that would change everything. As I drove home that evening, I thought about Marcus Aurelius, about a quote I'd taught dozens of times. The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury. I'd believed that most of my life. I'd built my whole philosophy around it: rise above, be better, don't sink to their level. But the Stoics never had sons who weaponized family, who turned love into leverage, who looked their fathers in the eye and smiled while planning their financial ruin. Sometimes the best revenge isn't being unlike them. Sometimes the best revenge is just the truth. Chad and Edward left for Europe on a Tuesday morning. I didn't see them off. Ashley drove them to the airport before dawn. I woke to a text message at 7 a.m. Chad, payment due while we're gone. Don't be late. 3 weeks ago, that message would have sent anxiety through my chest. Now I just deleted it. By 9 o'clock, I was sitting in Richard Patterson's office. He had everything ready. The LLC formation documents Piedmont Holdings LLC filed with the state 3 days earlier. The lottery claim forms listing that company as winner. And the complaint to the North Carolina Attorney General documenting Chad's lending operation across 8 families. Once I file this, Richard said, there's no taking it back. The investigation opens. It becomes public. I picked up the pen. My hand was steady. Not like 2 years ago in Chad's office when my fingers wouldn't stop shaking. Not like that morning in the hospital cafeteria when the world felt like it was collapsing. Steady. I signed every document. The LLC papers. The lottery claim. The complaint that would unravel everything Chad had built. You're sure? Richard asked. I'm sure. He nodded. I'll file the lottery claim today. The AG complaint goes out Monday. After that, things move fast. Good. 3 days later, Friday evening, Rachel came over. You're sure about this? She asked, holding up her phone. I'm sure. We stood on the front porch of 447 Oakwood Drive, the 3-bedroom colonial my parents had bought 40 years ago, the place Chad had been planning to take when I defaulted on his illegal loan. The evening light hit the brick just right. Rachel took the photo. Me on the steps, hands in my pockets, looking at home. Behind me, the house that had survived everything. I posted it with a simple caption, "Some legacies are worth protecting." #family, #home. Within an hour, people commented. Dean Anderson, beautiful home, James. Kevin, looking good, bro. Angela. Your parents would be proud. I didn't respond. Just let the post sit there. A quiet line in the sand. At 6 o'clock, I turned on the local news. Breaking news from Chapel Hill, the anchor said. A winning Powerball ticket worth $100 million was sold right here in our community. The ticket was purchased at the Quick Mart on Franklin Street. My phone rang before she finished. Ashley. I let it ring 3 times before answering. James, did you hear? Hear what? Someone in Chapel Hill won the lottery, $100 million. Huh, that's something. Pause. Then, James, you still have that ticket Chad gave you, right? Yeah, somewhere. Why? Have you checked it? No, should I? Her voice went up. Yes, check it right now. I'm eating dinner, Ashley. Forget dinner. This is $100 million. I took a bite of chicken, chewed slowly. I'm sure it's not mine. Those odds are astronomical. You don't know that. Please, just check it. I'll check it later. Later, James. I hung up. I sat at my kitchen table looking at my phone. Then I silenced it and went back to dinner. By Tuesday morning, I had 23 missed calls, 17 from Ashley, 6 from Chad calling from Paris, at what must have been ridiculous hours. I didn't call any of them back. Instead, I made coffee, got dressed, drove to campus through the early morning quiet, watching students walk to class with backpacks and travel mugs, living ordinary lives that felt extraordinary in their simplicity. My 8 o'clock class was Aristotle's Nicomachean Ethics. I'd been teaching it for 30 years. Usually it was a slog trying to get 19-year-olds to care about virtue when they were worried about exams and student loans. But that Tuesday was different. I stood at the front of the lecture hall and looked at the faces staring back, some alert, some half asleep, some scrolling through phones. Today, I said, we're talking about justice, not the abstract kind, the real kind, the kind that happens when you stop accepting injustice as normal. For 50 minutes, I talked about Aristotle's conception of justice as giving people what they're owed, about the difference between legal justice and moral justice, about what happens when those don't align. The students were riveted. Afterwards, 3 stayed to ask questions. One wanted to know if it was ever right to break an unjust law. Another asked about the ethics of revenge. A third just said, "Professor Sullivan, I've never seen you this engaged." I smiled. Sometimes the material becomes relevant in unexpected ways. I thought about Chad and Edward probably having breakfast in some Parisian cafe. About Ashley alone staring at her phone wondering why I wasn't calling back. About the truth coming for all of them whether they were ready or not. By Thursday, day 4 of their trip, I had 67 missed calls. I didn't listen to most of them right away. I let them accumulate like snow on a windshield notifications lighting up my phone every few hours. It was oddly satisfying watching that number climb. Wednesday morning, I finally put the voicemails on speaker while I made breakfast. Ashley's voice filled my kitchen, starting cheerful and deteriorating rapidly. Voicemail 1 Tuesday night. James, hi, just wondering about that ticket? Did you get a chance to look at it? Voicemail 8 Wednesday noon. This isn't funny anymore. Have you checked it or not? James, people are asking me. I don't know what to tell them. Voicemail 15 Thursday morning. Where are you? Why won't you answer your phone? Do you have any idea how this looks? Just call me back. I poured coffee and moved on to Chad's messages calling from Paris. Voicemail 2 Tuesday night. Dad, hey, Ashley says you're not picking up. Everything okay? Voicemail 9 Wednesday night. Dad, seriously, Mom's freaking out. He caught himself. I mean, Ashley's freaking out. Just give us a call when you get this. I paused the playback. Mom's freaking out. He'd said it without thinking. A slip that told me everything about who mattered in his world. Voicemail 14 Thursday morning. Look, if you did win, we need to talk strategy. Investments, tax shelters, trust funds. This is complicated stuff, Dad. You can't just walk into the lottery office and cash a check. Let me help you. That's what family does. There was one from Edward, too, his voice carrying that particular blend of annoyance and entitlement that rich men perfect over decades. James, it's Edward. Chad mentioned some lottery business. Give us a ring when you have a moment. Not please call, not if you get a chance. Just an expectation that I'd drop everything and respond because he'd asked. I deleted all of them and went to campus. That afternoon, I met Susan at Café Dryad again. She was already laughing when I sat down. How many now? 67. Jesus, they're unraveling. Good. She leaned forward, lowering her voice even though we were alone in the corner. So when are you going to put them out of their misery? Sunday night. Video call, 8 o'clock. I want everyone on camera, Chad, Edward, Ashley, all of them watching when I show them what I know. That's cold, James. That's consequence. She smiled. I'm proud of you. Thursday evening, I sent one text message to the family group chat Claire had created years ago, back when she was still alive, and still believed we could be the kind of family that stayed in touch. On my video call Sunday, 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Everyone needs to be there. The responses came instantly. Ashley, finally, yes, we'll be there. Chat about time. See you then. Edward noted. I set my phone down and looked around my study. The room my father had built. The shelves filled with books I'd collected over a lifetime. The window that looked out onto the backyard where Rachel used to play when she was small. This was it. The moment I'd been building toward since I found those contracts. Since I learned what Chad had been doing. Since I realized that staying silent was costing me more than speaking ever could. Sunday evening arrived like the end of a held breath. At 7:45, I sat at my desk and arranged everything I needed. The loan agreement Chad had made me sign with the 38% interest rate highlighted in yellow. Copies of the 8 other contracts, the Johnsons, Aisha, Williams, all of them. The screenshots Susan had taken of the text messages between Chad and Vanessa, including the one where he called me the old man and detailed his plan to foreclose on my house. A printout of North Carolina General Statute Section 24-1.1, the usury law that made everything Chad had done illegal, and a bank statement from Piedmont Holdings, LLC, showing a balance of $100 million. I tested the screen sharing function 3 times. I'd never been great with technology, but I needed this to work perfectly. No frozen screens, no technical difficulties, just truth presented clearly with no room for excuses. At 7:55, my phone rang. Rachel. Hey, sweetheart. Dad. Her voice was quiet. Remember what I said. Don't become like them. I won't. This isn't about hurting them, right? This is about stopping them from hurting anyone else. There's a difference. Okay. She paused. I love you. I love you too. I hung up and stared at the computer screen, at the button that said Start Meeting. My finger hovered over the trackpad. Was this revenge? Revenge would be petty. Revenge would be taking pleasure in their pain. This was different. This was a father protecting his daughter, a neighbor protecting his community, a man who'd been silent for too long, finally speaking up because someone had to. This was consequence. At exactly 8 o'clock, I clicked Start. The screen divided into 3 boxes. Chad and Edward appeared together, squeezed into frame in what looked like a cramped hotel room. Behind them, through a window, I could see lights scattered across Rome's nighttime skyline. It was 2 a.m. their time. They both looked exhausted, Edward in a hotel bathrobe, Chad in a wrinkled t-shirt. Ashley appeared in her own box, sitting alone in what I recognized as their living room. She looked confused, glancing around, like she was waiting for someone to explain why she'd been summoned. Edward looked irritated at being woken up. Chad looked impatient, running a hand through his hair. They were all waiting, expecting good news, expecting me to tell them I'd won the lottery and needed their help, their guidance, their expertise in managing money I'd never had before. They had no idea what was coming. "Hi, everyone," I said, keeping my voice calm and level. "Thanks for making time." Chad leaned into the camera, his face filling the frame. "Dad. Finally. Did you check the ticket?" I did. Everyone leaned closer. Ashley in her living room. Chad and Edward squeezed together in that cramped Roman hotel room 2 in the morning, their time both looking like they'd been dragged from sleep. And Ashley's voice was tight, breathless. All 6 numbers matched. For a second, nobody moved. Then chaos. Ashley screamed. Actually screamed, hands flying to her mouth. Chad jumped up so fast, he hit his head on something off camera, a lamp maybe, and swore. Edward's eyes went wide, his whole face transforming from annoyed to stunned in half a heartbeat. $100 million, I said. 62 million after taxes. Chad recovered first. Of course he did. He sat back down, running both hands through his hair, that familiar grin spreading across his face like he'd just closed a business deal. "Dad, that's incredible. That's wow. Okay, listen." He leaned toward the camera again, suddenly all business. "This is serious money. You're going to need help managing it. Investment portfolios, tax strategies, estate planning. I can set you up with people, the right people. We'll get you diversified, protected." "James, congratulations." Edward's voice cut through Chad's pitch, smooth and authoritative. He'd put on reading glasses, suddenly looking more awake. "Quite a windfall. Chad's absolutely right. You'll need professional financial guidance. This isn't the kind of money you can just deposit in a savings account." "Oh my God, this is..." Ashley was crying now. Happy tears, her hands still pressed to her face. "This is amazing, James. This changes everything. You can retire. You can travel. You can..." "Before we talk about money," I said, cutting through the excitement, "there's something else we need to discuss." I clicked the screen share button. The loan agreement appeared on their screens. My copy, the one I'd signed 2 years ago in Chad's office with shaking hands. Every clause visible. Every line of fine print I'd been too desperate to read. "Did you know," I said, keeping my voice conversational, "that North Carolina caps interest rates at 30% for private lenders?" Chad's face drained of color. 30%, I repeated. "Not 38, which means this loan you gave me has been illegal for 2 years." The silence that followed was deafening. Edward frowned, leaning closer to his screen. "Chad, what is he talking about?" "What loan?" Ashley asked, her confusion genuine. I let the question hang for a moment. Then I spoke directly to the camera. 2 years ago, Rachel was in a car accident. Drunk driver. She spent 2 weeks in the ICU, had 3 surgeries. The medical bills came to $188,000 after insurance. I went to 3 banks. They all said no. I watched Ashley's face change as she started to understand. So Chad offered me a loan, called it a family rate. I was desperate, so I signed without reading the details. I scrolled down on the shared screen, highlighting the key sections. Loan amount $188,000. Interest rate 38%, APR compounding monthly. Collateral my house at 447 Oakwood Drive, valued at $550,000. The text was right there, clinical and clear. No room for interpretation. Edward's face had gone from confusion to something harder. "You charged your father 38% interest. It's a private loan agreement, it's not." Chad stammered. It's usury. My voice was steady. And according to North Carolina General Statute 24-1.1, it's void. Legally unenforceable. Wait. Ashley was looking at Chad now, really looking at him. You've been charging your father illegal interest. Ashley, it's complicated. How is it complicated? Her voice was rising. Your father needed money to save Rachel's life, and you, what saw an opportunity. That's not... How much has he paid you? I asked. Chad went silent. I'll tell you. Over 2 years, I've paid him $8,500 a month. That's $204,000. On a $188,000 loan. And according to his amortization schedule, I still owe him $192,000. I let that sink in. Watched Ashley do the math in her head. Watched Edward's expression shift from confusion to fury. You've paid him more than you borrowed, Ashley whispered, and you still owe him money. That's how compound interest works when the rate is designed to trap you. Edward stood up. Even through the grainy hotel Wi-Fi, I could see the anger radiating off him. Is this true, Chad? I run a legitimate lending business. Legitimate. Edward's voice was sharp enough to cut. You just heard him say it's illegal. The statutory cap is 30% for unlicensed lenders, I said. Anything above that is criminal usury in this state. Your son-in-law could face charges. Dad. Chad started, but he wasn't talking to me. He was talking to Edward. Another slip, another tell. Don't call me that. Edward's voice was ice. Not right now. I could see Chad trying to regroup, trying to find an angle, a spin, some way to make this sound reasonable, but there wasn't one. The numbers were right there on the screen. The law was clear. Ashley was staring at Chad like she'd never seen him before. This is why you wanted him at the Father's Day dinner, she said slowly. Why you insisted on inviting him to our house even though you always said... She stopped. You were setting him up. You gave him that lottery ticket as a joke because you thought he was worthless. But really, you were just waiting for him to default so you could take his house. Ashley, that's not... Is it true? Chad opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. Nothing came out. Edward sat back down heavily, pulling off his glasses and rubbing his face. Jesus Christ, Chad. Ashley looked at me through the screen, and for the first time since I'd known her, I saw something other than polite distance in her eyes. I saw horror, and maybe the beginning of understanding. Wait, she said slowly. You've been doing this to your own father. Chad's mouth moved, but no words formed. I looked directly into the camera. There's more, I said quietly. A lot more, to more. Edward's voice was sharp. What more could there possibly be? I clicked to share my screen again. The 3 boxes on my monitor showed Chad and Edward in their hotel room in Rome, the city dark outside their window at 2 a.m. Ashley sat alone in our old living room, and me in the study my father built. I'm glad you asked Edward, I said. The folder appeared on their screens, SFA client files, 8 PDF documents, each one a contract, each one a family. 8 families that I know of? I said, letting the first contract fill the screen. All of them charged illegal interest rates. All of them with collateral they can't afford to lose. I scrolled slowly. The names moved past like a roll call of desperation. Johnson Family Loan. Amount $53,000, interest rate 39%, APR, collateral 2018, Honda Accord, Aisha Williams, loan amount $72,000, interest rate 40%, APR, collateral bakery equipment, plus future revenue. Dean Anderson's daughter loan amount $38,000, interest rate 35%, APR collateral engagement ring, plus wage garnishment, 5 more contracts scrolled past. I didn't read them aloud. I didn't need to. The numbers spoke for themselves. Ashley's face had gone white. Wait, the Johnsons, they live 2 blocks from us. 3 blocks, I corrected quietly. Their daughter was in Rachel's Girl Scout troop. Edward's face filled his camera frame, jaw tight. Chad, what the hell are you running here? Chad leaned back in his hotel chair, arms crossed. It's just business. They came to me. They came to you desperate, I cut him off. Medical bills, emergency repairs, tuition, and you exploited that. They signed the contracts, Chad shot back. Contracts that violate North Carolina General Statute 24-1.1, I said. Every single one of them. I let that sit for a moment. Edward was no longer looking at the screen. He was staring at Chad. The investigation opens Monday, I continued. Subpoenas, audits, and possibly criminal charges for predatory lending. The Attorney General's office has all of this. Ashley's voice came through small and hollow. You've been doing this to our neighbors. Chad's face hardened. Are we done here? I shook my head. No, there's one more thing. I clicked again. A new set of images appeared on screen. Text messages, hundreds of them. Ashley leaned toward her camera, squinting. Then her hand went to her mouth. 8 months, I said quietly. That's how long these messages go back. The screenshots scrolled. I'd redacted some of the more explicit content, but the meaning was clear. Hotel names, dates, times. Raleigh Marriott Room 412, Durham Hilton, meet at 7. Can't wait to see you again. Ashley stood up her chair, scraping across the floor. Her voice shook. Who is V? Chad's face had lost all its color. Ash, I can explain. Vanessa, I said. His assistant. The one who's been helping him manage all these loans. I'd saved the worst for last. The final screenshot appeared and I let it fill the screen. From V to Chad. When the old man defaults, you'll have the house. Then we're set. Ashley's outlived her usefulness anyway. Just a few more months. Timestamp March 14th, 7:43 p.m. 3 months ago. While Ashley was planning their anniversary dinner. While I was making loan payments that barely touched the principal. Ashley's breathing was audible through her microphone. I want a divorce. Ash, wait. Chad started. I want a divorce, she said again louder. Her camera went black. Chad turned desperately to the other box on the screen, the one showing Edward in the hotel room. Dad, you have to understand. Don't call me that. Edward's voice was ice. You're done. This trip ends now. I'm booking the earliest flight home. Edward stood his phone already in his hand. I heard him barking in Italian at what must have been the hotel concierge. Voglio il primo volo per gli Stati Uniti domani mattina. Non mi interessa il costo. His screen went black. Now it was just 2 boxes. Me in my father's study. Chad alone in a hotel room in Rome at 2 a.m, 8 hours and an ocean away from the life he'd just lost. You just destroyed my life, Chad said, his voice low and dangerous. No, I replied calmly. You did that yourself. I just told the truth. His hands were shaking. We're not done. Yes, I said. We are. I reached for the mouse. For 30 years, I'd been the one left behind. The one dismissed. The one made invisible. Not anymore. Goodbye, Chad. I clicked end call. The screen went black. The room fell silent except for the old clock on the wall, the one my father wound every Sunday morning. It ticked steadily, marking time the way it had for 40 years. I sat back in the chair and looked at the dark monitor. My hands weren't shaking. My heart wasn't racing. I felt for the first time in 2 years like I could breathe. Rachel had asked me not to become like them, to stay better, to choose justice over revenge. I hadn't humiliated Chad for sport. I hadn't taken pleasure in his pain. I just told the truth. All of it. The loans, the families, the affair, the plan to take my house and discard his wife. Sometimes the truth is enough. My phone buzzed on the desk. Rachel's name appeared on the screen. "Dad, are you okay?" I looked around the study, the books my father collected, the desk he built, the house he left me, the house Chad would never take. "I am now," I said. For the first time in 2 years, I meant it. If you're still here after that call, drop a 1 below. This story uses creative elements for impact. If that's not for you, no problem, feel free to step away. But if you want to see what Vanessa does Monday morning and how the legal system responds, stay with me. Edward had disappeared from the screen. I could hear him in the background shouting in Italian something about the earliest flight and immediately. Ashley was crying silently on her camera, her face in her hands. Chad sat frozen, his face the color of ash. The hotel room in Rome behind him looked suddenly small, the walls closing in. I took a breath. This was the moment I'd been building toward for 3 weeks. Not revenge, not cruelty, just clarity. I need to say 5 things. I began, my voice steady. And I need you both to listen. Ashley lowered her hands. Chad's eyes were fixed on the screen, unblinking. "First," I said, "the loan of $188,000 is legally void under North Carolina statute. I don't owe you a single cent. Your lien on my house has no legal standing." Chad opened his mouth to speak. "I'm not done," I said. He closed it. "Second, 447 Oakwood Drive remains mine. When I'm gone, it goes to Rachel. You will never touch it. Not the house my father built. Not the legacy he left. That's over." I watched Chad's jaw tighten. Good. Let him feel what it's like to lose something that matters. Third, the $62 million after taxes will be allocated as follows. I kept my tone conversational, as if I were discussing the weather. Rachel's nursing school debt will be paid in full. $2 million will establish the Sullivan Scholarship Fund for first-generation college students at UNC. The rest is my business. Ashley wiped her eyes. She wasn't crying anymore. She was listening. Fourth, the Attorney General will contact you Monday morning. You'll need a lawyer, Chad. A real one. Chad's hands curled into fists on the hotel desk. "You self-righteous fifth," I said, speaking over him. "From this moment forward, you and I have no relationship. Not financial, not familial. I will see Rachel because she is my daughter and my choice. You are just a stranger who happens to carry my last name." The room fell silent except for the faint sound of Edward's voice still arguing with someone in the hotel lobby. Ashley's camera shifted. She was standing now looking at something off-screen. At Chad, I realized. "I can't believe I ever defended you," she said, her voice hollow. "My father was right. You're all surface, there's nothing underneath." Chad turned to her, his face twisting. "Ash, you don't understand." "I understand perfectly," she said. "I've understood for a while. I just didn't want to see it." Her screen went black. Edward's face reappeared flushed and breathing hard. He'd been running. His hair, usually perfect, was disheveled. "James." He paused, searching for words. I'm sorry. I didn't know he'd done these things to you." I looked at him for a long moment. "Edward Thornton, The man who'd spent 2 years making me feel small at every dinner, every gathering, every Father's Day. The man who'd mocked my profession, my salary, my life. You didn't know because you didn't ask, I said quietly. You assumed I was weak because I wasn't wealthy. But wealth and worth aren't the same thing. Edward went still. Then slowly he nodded. It was a small gesture, but for a man like Edward Thornton, it might as well have been a bow. You're right, he said. I owe you better than that. He glanced off screen at Chad, I assumed. I'll be home by Tuesday. We'll talk then, Ashley and I. He looked back at the camera. For what it's worth, James, I'm glad you told the truth. His screen went dark. Now it was just Chad and me, father and son. Except we weren't that anymore. Maybe we'd never really been. Chad's face filled his camera frame. His eyes were red. His voice came out low and dangerous. You think you've won. This isn't about winning, I said. You just destroyed everything I built. No, I replied. You built it on lies. I just showed people what was there. He leaned closer to his camera. I will never forgive you for this. I don't need your forgiveness, I said. I needed you to be better. And you weren't. For 32 years, I'd looked at Chad and seen potential. The smart kid. The ambitious young man. The son who was going to change the world. I'd made excuses when he cut corners. I'd stayed silent when he hurt people. I'd told myself he'd grow out of it. But some people don't grow. They just get better at hiding who they are. I looked at my son one last time, 32 years old, sitting in a hotel in Rome at 2 a.m. with his world collapsing around him. I've taught ethics for decades, I said. Justice, consequence. You should have paid attention. His mouth opened. Whatever he was about to say, I didn't want to hear it. I moved my cursor to the red button at the bottom of the screen. Goodbye, Chad. I clicked. The 3 boxes disappeared. The screen went black. The only sound in the study was the ticking of my father's clock, steady and certain. I sat back in the chair, the one my father built in the house my father left me in the life I'd almost lost, and I felt something I hadn't felt in 2 years. Free. My phone buzzed, a text from Rachel. Dad, whatever you just did, I'm proud of you. I typed back, I just told the truth. That's all. Another text came through immediately. That's everything. I looked around the study, the books my father collected, the degrees I'd earned, the life I'd built on $68,000 a year, and a belief that ideas mattered more than money. Chad had called me weak. Edward had called me small. Even Claire, before she died, had sometimes looked at me like I was less ambitious, less driven, less enough. But I'd raised a daughter who became a nurse to help people. I'd taught students who went on to fight for justice. I'd lived 30 years in a house full of love and books and quiet Sunday mornings. And when my son tried to take it all away, I'd stood up. Not with cruelty, not with revenge, just with the truth. I powered down the computer. The monitor went dark. In the black screen, I caught my reflection, 55 years old, gray at the temples, wearing a sweater my father would have worn. I looked like him. Finally. I stood, turned off the desk lamp, and walked out of the study. Behind me, the clock kept ticking. The house kept standing. And somewhere in Rome, my son was learning what it cost to mistake silence for weakness. I closed the door behind me. Monday morning, Vanessa burned it all down. I was grading papers in my office at UNC when Rachel called. Dad, you need to see this. She texted me a link, a social media post from an account I didn't recognize. But the photos were unmistakable. Screenshots of text messages, hundreds of them, far more than I'd shown on the video call. Bank statements showing transfers from Sullivan Financial Advisory to personal accounts. Photos of Chad and Vanessa at restaurants, hotels, weekend trips to the mountains. The caption read, "When he promises you the world, but forgets to mention the wife, the illegal loans, and the fraud. Exposed karma." Within an hour, it had been shared 200 times. Within 3 hours, it was all over Chapel Hill. By Tuesday morning, the local news had picked it up. Chapel Hill financial advisor under investigation for predatory lending scrolled across the screen in the faculty lounge while I made coffee. Colleagues glanced at me. Some knew Chad was my son. Most were too polite to ask. But the internet wasn't polite. The comments section on the news article exploded. People I'd never heard of, families Chad had trapped the same way he'd trapped me, began telling their stories. He lent us $28,000 at 42% interest when our son needed surgery. We're losing our house. My mother borrowed $15,000 for my father's funeral. He's garnishing her Social Security. We thought he was helping us. We didn't know it was illegal. The number kept growing. By Wednesday, it wasn't 8 families anymore. It was 12, then 17, then 23. 23 families. 23 desperate situations turned into profit. Richard Patterson called me Thursday morning. The Attorney General's office issued a formal announcement. They're opening a full investigation into Sullivan Financial Advisory. "How long will it take?" I asked. "Months," Richard said. "But James, this is big. Criminal usury. Wire fraud. If they can prove a pattern, possibly racketeering." I sat down in my desk chair. Racketeering. The word felt too large, too cinematic. But then I thought about 23 families, 23 contracts, 23 traps. Maybe it wasn't too large after all. By the second week, the legal machinery was fully engaged. Subpoenas went out for Sullivan Financial Advisory's business records. Bank accounts were frozen. Chad's business license was suspended pending the outcome of the investigation. I didn't call him. I didn't reach out. I'd said what I needed to say on that video call, and I'd meant it. We were done. But Ashley called me. 12 missed calls over 3 days. I let them all go to voicemail. I wasn't ready. Maybe I'd never be ready. The first message came Tuesday of week 3. "James, it's Ashley. I don't know who else to talk to. About what needs to happen. About all of this. Can you call me?" Her voice was small, shaky. Nothing like the composed, cool woman who'd stood beside Chad at Edward's mansion, smiling while he handed me a $1.50 lottery ticket. I played the message for Rachel that night over dinner at her apartment. "She's a victim too, Dad," Rachel said quietly. "Even if she treated us badly." "I know," I said. "But I'm not ready yet." Rachel nodded. "That's okay. You don't owe her anything. But when you are ready, she might need someone who understands." I thought about that. Ashley, who'd looked down on me for 2 years. Ashley who'd laughed at that Father's Day dinner. Ashley who was now learning what it felt like to be married to a man who saw people as transactions. Maybe Rachel was right. Maybe Ashley had been a victim longer than I'd realized. But forgiveness or even compassion would take time. By the 3rd week, the civil lawsuits started. The Johnsons filed first. Then Aisha Williams. Then Dean Anderson's daughter, the one who'd been forced to use her engagement ring as collateral. 23 families, 23 individual lawsuits, each one seeking damages, each one demanding justice. Richard called again. "The AG's office wants to talk to you. They need your testimony about the loan Chad gave you. The timeline, the terms, how he pressured you." "When?" I asked. "Next week. Are you ready?" I looked around the study, my father's clock, my father's desk. The house he'd built with his own hands, the house I'd nearly lost because I'd been too desperate and too trusting. "I'm ready," I said. Week 4 arrived like a storm breaking. Chad hired 3 lawyers. I saw their names in the news: a criminal defense attorney from Raleigh, a civil litigator from Charlotte, and a crisis management consultant who specialized in reputation rehabilitation. It wouldn't be enough. Edward Thornton released a public statement. I read it on the university library computer between classes. "I am shocked and dismayed to learn of the alleged criminal activities conducted by Chad Sullivan. I want to make clear that I had no knowledge of these operations and do not condone them in any way. My family and I are cooperating fully with investigators." It was clinical, distant, the statement of a man protecting his legacy. The Thornton estate, the inheritance Chad had been chasing, the wealth he'd married into the empire he'd thought would be his, was now permanently out of reach. Ashley called again that week. I still didn't answer, but I listened to her message. "James, I know you don't want to talk to me. I understand. But I need you to know. I filed for divorce. It's final in 6 months, and I'm testifying against Chad. The AG's office asked me to, and I said yes." There was a long pause. I could hear her breathing. I should have said something sooner. At those dinners, when my father made those comments. When Chad gave you that ticket, I should have said something. I'm sorry. The message ended. I sat in the study, my father's photograph on the desk in front of me. He was standing in front of this house the day they finished building it, my mother beside him. They looked young, proud, like they'd built something that would last. And it had. Chad had tried to take it. He'd used my desperation, my love for Rachel, my fear of losing the only thing my parents left me. He'd turned my crisis into his profit. But the house still stood, and I was still here. Friday of the 4th week, I made 2 phone calls. The first was to Richard Patterson. "I'm ready to give my testimony. Schedule it whenever they need me." The second was to Ashley. She answered on the first ring. "James, I got your messages," I said. "I'm so sorry." "I know," I said. "We'll talk, but not yet. I need more time." "I understand." Her voice was thick. "Thank you for calling back." I hung up and looked around the study one more time. Chad had 3 lawyers and a crumbling empire. Vanessa had burned his reputation to the ground. Edward had disowned him. Ashley had left him. 23 families were suing him. The state of North Carolina was building a criminal case against him. And me, I sat in my father's house in my father's chair, surrounded by books and memories, and a life built on $68,000 a year and a belief that people mattered more than profit. I'd told the truth. That was all. And the truth had been enough. Outside my window, the oak tree my father planted 40 years ago swayed in the evening breeze. The house creaked and settled the way old houses do. Somewhere in the distance, I heard Rachel's car pull into the driveway. She was coming for dinner. We'd made it a Friday tradition. I stood, turned off the desk lamp, and walked toward the front door. The letter arrived on a Tuesday, 6 weeks after the video call, handwritten on cream-colored stationery, from Ashley. I stared at it for a full minute before opening it. "Dear James, I was cruel. For 2 years I believed the version of you that Chad told me, that you were less than us. I let that story shape how I treated you. The dinners, the comments, that Father's Day when Chad gave you that lottery ticket, and I said nothing. I didn't know about the loan, about the affair, about any of it. But ignorance isn't innocence. My father raised me to measure worth in dollars. I'm starting to see where that leads. I'm filing for divorce. I've moved into my own place. It's the first time I've lived alone since college. It's terrifying, but it's honest. I don't expect forgiveness, but I wanted you to know I'm sorry, and thank you for showing me the truth before I wasted any more of my life. Ashley, I read it twice. Then I called Rachel. She came over for dinner that Friday. I showed her the letter. She's trying, Dad, Rachel said after reading it. She was cruel for 2 years. I know. But she's choosing differently now. You taught me about Aristotle, people develop virtue through practice, right? Maybe she's practicing. I looked at my daughter, 28 years old, wearing scrubs from her shift her hair in a ponytail. You're smarter than I am, I said. She smiled. I learned from you. 3 weeks later, I texted her. Coffee Saturday at Café Driad, 10 a.m. I'll be there. Thank you, James. Ashley arrived exactly at 10. She looked different, less polished, jeans and a sweater instead of designer clothes. No jewelry except simple earrings. She looked like someone who'd stopped performing. Thank you for meeting me, she said. I got your letter. I meant every word. She wrapped her hands around her coffee cup. I've been working with Richard Patterson. Did you know that? I blinked. No. I reached out a few weeks ago. I have a business degree. I never used it, but I have it. He needed help with paperwork for some of Chad's victims. I'm helping 5 families file motions. Pro bono. You're helping the people Chad hurt. It doesn't undo what I didn't do, but it's something. I studied her face. The woman who'd stood beside Chad at that Father's Day dinner, smiling while he humiliated me. But people weren't static. Aristotle knew that. Virtue wasn't something you were born with. It was something you practiced. The divorce? I asked. He's contesting it, trying to drag it out. She took a sip of coffee. My father cut him off financially. Chad's hoping I'll come back if he can just outlast me. Will you? No. The word was firm. I saw who he really is. I can't unsee it. We sat in silence. The cafe buzzed around us students studying the espresso machine, hissing. I was cruel to you, Ashley said quietly. Before I knew about the loans or Vanessa, I was cruel because I thought you were less than me. Because my father did. Because Chad did. That's not an excuse. It's just the truth. Why are you telling me this? Because you deserve to hear it. And because I need to say it. Out loud. To your face. I thought about all those dinners. All those moments when I'd felt erased. I'm not ready to forgive you, I said. Not yet. I understand. But I appreciate what you're doing. For those families. Her eyes were bright. It's not enough, but it's all I have. That's all any of us have, I said. The choice to try. When we stood to leave, she held out her hand. I shook it. It wasn't friendship. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But it was acknowledgement. Driving home, I thought about justice versus mercy. Consequence versus compassion. Ashley wasn't innocent. She'd been cruel long before she knew about Chad's crimes. She'd stood by while her father diminished me. But she was trying to change, and maybe that was worth recognizing. Not forgiveness, not yet, maybe not ever, but possibility. Rachel had been right. People develop virtue through practice. Ashley was practicing. I pulled into the driveway at 447 Oakwood Drive, the house my father built, the house that was still standing. Inside, my father's clock ticked steadily. I sat in the study looking at the photo of my parents in front of this house, young and hopeful. Chad had taught me what betrayal looked like, but Ashley reluctantly, haltingly, was teaching me something else. That even people who'd been complicit could choose to be different. That redemption wasn't a moment. It was a practice. I wasn't ready to forgive her, but I was willing to watch her try. And for now, that was enough. 1 year after that Father's Day, I stood before my Philosophy 401 seminar and asked the same question I'd been asking for decades. What does it mean to live well? 23 students looked back at me. Some took notes. Some leaned forward, genuinely curious. One, a scholarship recipient named Maria, raised her hand. "Is it about money?" she asked. I smiled. A year ago, that question would have stung. Today, it was just honest curiosity. Aristotle said eudaimonia, human flourishing, comes from living virtuously. Not from wealth, not from status, from choosing well again and again, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. A year changes everything, and nothing. I still live at 447 Oakwood Drive, still teach at UNC, still make $68,000 a year, though now it's a choice, not a necessity. The house looks different. Rachel and I renovated the kitchen last spring. New cabinets, new counters, a window over the sink that looks out at the oak tree my father planted. We redid the garden, too. Tomatoes, basil, flowers my mother used to grow. The money sits mostly untouched. $62 million managed by a financial advisor Susan recommended. I take what I need for renovations, for Rachel's student loans paid in full, and for the scholarship fund. The rest just exists. A safety net I'll probably never use. I don't need much. Coffee in the morning, books, my students. Rachel every Sunday for dinner. That's enough. Rachel finished her nursing degree debt-free. She's a charge nurse now at UNC Hospital, leading a team on the cardiac floor. She's dating Jake Kevin's son, my nephew. It's new tentative, but she smiles when she talks about him. Every Sunday she comes over for dinner. It's become our tradition. Sometimes Susan joins us, sometimes Ashley. 6 months ago, her divorce was finalized. She works full-time as a paralegal, now helping Richard Patterson with pro bono cases. 15 of Chad's victims have gotten legal assistance through her work. She and Rachel have coffee sometimes. She texts me occasionally, updates on cases or just to check in. It's not family, but it's something. A cautious friendship built on honesty instead of obligation. She doesn't speak to Edward anymore. That was her choice. He calls sometimes, she told me. Leaves voicemails apologizing, asking her to come back. She deletes them. Edward Thornton, the man who measured worth in dollars, is alone now. His reputation in Chapel Hill's upper circles took a hit when the story broke. People still smile at him at the country club, but it's different. Cooler. He's learned what it feels like to be invisible. I don't take pleasure in that. But I notice it. The Sullivan Scholarship Fund launched last fall. $2 million managed by the university, named after my parents, Robert and Helen Sullivan. It funds first-generation college students pursuing degrees in the humanities. Philosophy, English, history. The degrees people say are impractical. The degrees that teach you how to think, how to question, how to live. 17 students so far. 12 last year, 5 new ones this semester. Maria is one of them. Chad took a plea deal. His business license was revoked. He pled guilty to criminal usury and wire fraud. The DA dropped the racketeering charges in exchange for his cooperation. 2 years probation. $500,000 in fines and restitution. 500 hours of community service. No jail time. Some people were angry about that. The victims wanted more. I understood. But Richard explained it to me. The plea deal meant the victims got restitution faster. A trial could have taken years. Chad would have fought every charge, drained every resource. This way the families got their money, and Chad lost everything else. He's working retail now. Some cell phone store in Durham. He tried to email me twice, once last fall, once in January. Both times I blocked the address without reading them. Rachel asked me once if I'd ever talk to him again. I don't know, I said honestly. Maybe someday, but not yet. She nodded. That's fair. After class, Maria approached my desk. She's 20, the first in her family to go to college. Her parents are farm workers in Alamance County. Professor Sullivan, I just wanted to say thank you. This scholarship changed my life. I smiled. That's exactly what it's supposed to do. I read about what happened with your son. I'm sorry. No, thank you, Maria. But you don't need to apologize for that. She hesitated. My mom says the universe has a way of balancing things. Like karma. I thought about that. About the lottery ticket Chad gave me as a joke. About $62 million. About standing in Edward's mansion feeling invisible and standing here now funding students like Maria. The universe doesn't owe us anything, I said. But sometimes we owe ourselves the truth. She nodded slowly, like she was writing that down in her mind. When she left, I packed my bag and walked across campus. The leaves were turning orange and gold against the October sky. Students hurried between classes. Someone was playing guitar on the quad. I thought about that Father's Day, about the crumpled $1.50 ticket, about Chad's smile, about 30 people watching while I became a punchline. A year ago, I'd felt erased. Today, I felt present. I stopped at Café Dryad on the way home. Susan was already there, 2 coffees on the table. How was class? She asked. Good. Maria thanked me for the scholarship. Susan smiled. You're changing lives, James. I'm just telling the truth. That's all I did. Sometimes she'd said that's everything. That night, Rachel came over for Sunday dinner. We made pasta her recipe this time with fresh basil from the garden. We sat at the kitchen table, the same table where I'd opened Ashley's letter 9 months ago. Dad, Rachel said, twirling spaghetti on her fork. Are you happy? I looked around. The kitchen we'd renovated together. The house my father built. The daughter who'd become my compass. Yeah, I said, I am. She grinned. Good, you deserve it. After dinner, she left for her shift at the hospital. I washed the dishes, dried them, put them away. Then I walked into the study. My father's clock ticked on the wall. His books lined the shelves. The photo of him and my mother sat on the desk, young, hopeful, standing in front of the house they'd built. I'd saved this house, not with a lottery ticket, not with $62 million. I'd saved it by telling the truth. Chad had tried to take everything, my home, my dignity, my peace. He'd turned my love for Rachel into leverage. He'd built an empire on desperation, but the house still stood. Rachel thrived. 17 students had a chance they wouldn't have had otherwise. And me, I was still here, still teaching, still asking students what it means to live well, still trying to live the answer. I sat down at my father's desk and pulled out a notebook. Tomorrow's lecture was on Kant, duty, autonomy, the categorical imperative. But tonight I just wrote one line. The universe doesn't owe us balance, but we owe ourselves the truth. I closed the notebook, turned off the desk lamp, walked out of the study. Behind me the clock kept ticking, steady, certain, enduring, just like the truth. The Sullivan Scholarship ceremony was held in Manning Hall, the oldest lecture hall on campus, the same room where I'd taught my first class 30 years ago. The wooden seats creaked. High windows let in afternoon light. A banner hung at the front, the Robert and Helen Sullivan Scholarship Fund, honoring first-generation students in the humanities. I stood backstage with Rachel adjusting my tie. You're nervous, she said. I don't like being the center of attention. Too bad, she kissed my cheek. You earned this. The hall was full. Parents, siblings, grandparents, families who'd driven hours. Susan sat in the third row. Ashley was in the back, quiet. Dean Anderson took the podium. Today, we celebrate 5 new Sullivan scholars joining the 12 continuing their studies. This scholarship represents belief that ideas matter, that first-generation students deserve a place at this table. He looked at me. Professor Sullivan's quiet generosity has changed lives. Please join me in welcoming him to the stage. The applause was warm. I looked at the 17 scholarship recipients in the front rows. Maria, David, Keisha, Alejandro. Young people who worked night shifts and carried the weight of being the first in their families to reach this far. Aristotle said we become virtuous by practicing virtue. I began. We become just by doing just acts. I paused. Someone once tried to make me believe I was worth $1.50. For a long time I believed them. Rachel's eyes were bright. These scholarships aren't charity. They're an investment in people who understand struggle. People who know that worth isn't measured in dollars. I looked at the students. You deserve to be fought for. Don't ever forget that. The room erupted. Dean Anderson stood. Then Rachel. Then everyone. Rachel spoke next. My father saved my life twice, she said. Once from a car accident, and once from believing I wasn't worth fighting for. She looked at me. He taught me that integrity isn't about being perfect. It's about choosing truth even when it costs everything. Her voice broke slightly. These scholarships exist because my father chose truth over silence. And I'm so proud to be his daughter. After the ceremony, students surrounded me. One lingered, a philosophy major named Daniel. Professor Sullivan, how do you know when it's time to speak up? I thought about 2 years of silence, about Rachel in the ICU, about standing in Edward's mansion invisible. When staying silent means betraying yourself, I said. When it means letting someone else define your worth. Even if it costs you everything, especially then. Ashley stood at the back, gathering her things. Our eyes met briefly. She gave a small nod, respectful, distant. She didn't approach. I didn't wave her over. Some relationships were built on quiet acknowledgement. She was doing the work. I was watching. That was enough. 2 days later, I taught my seminar, Justice, Mercy, and Family Ethics. I'd designed case studies drawn from real life. From my life. Case Study 3. A father loans money to his son during an emergency. The son charges illegal interest. Years later, the father discovers the truth. Does the father owe the son forgiveness? The class erupted. Family is everything, one student argued. Even when they exploit you, another shot back. Forgiveness isn't reconciliation, a third said. You can forgive and still maintain boundaries. I listened, guiding occasionally. Case Study 4. A woman marries a man who commits financial crimes. She benefits, but claims ignorance. When truth emerges, she helps his victims. Does that redeem her? She didn't know, one said. But she didn't ask, another countered. Willful ignorance is a choice. But she's trying to make it right now. It counts, I said quietly. But it doesn't erase what came before. Redemption is practice, not absolution. At the end of class, Emily stopped at the door. Professor Sullivan, do you think people can change? Fundamentally? I thought about Ashley working with victims, about Chad who'd learned nothing, about myself finally learning to stand. Yes, I said. But only when they choose to. Change is always a choice. That night, I sat in my study grading papers. The house was quiet except for my father's clock. 17 students. 17 futures that looked different because of a crumpled lottery ticket and a son who thought cruelty was clever. Chad had tried to reduce me to $1.50. Instead, he'd given me the means to change 17 lives. And counting. My phone buzzed. A text from Maria. Professor, I got accepted to Yale's summer program. Thank you for believing in me. I texted back. I always did. Now go show them what first-gen students can do. I looked at my parents' photo. Young, hopeful, building something meant to last. Their house still stood. Their son still taught. And 17 students had a chance they wouldn't have had otherwise. I didn't need revenge. I had something better. I had the truth, and I had used it well. I was grading papers on a Saturday afternoon when there was a knock at the door. I wasn't expecting anyone. Through the window, I saw Chad standing on the porch, 15 months since that Father's Day. 15 months since the video call. He looked older, thinner. The expensive watch was gone. He wore jeans and a plain jacket. I opened the door but didn't step aside. "Dad, can I come in?" I hesitated. Curiosity won over caution. I stepped back. We sat at the kitchen table. I didn't offer coffee. He didn't ask. "I didn't come here for money," Chad said, "or forgiveness. I just needed to see you." I waited. See, I lost everything. My career. Ashley won't return my calls. Edward won't speak to me. I'm working at Best Buy, living in a studio apartment. "I know," I said. Susan had kept me updated. He looked down at his hands. "I was wrong. About the loan. About how I treated you." "You weren't wrong," I said quietly. "You were deliberate. For years." He flinched. "Mom died when I was 12. You were drowning in grief. I was angry at you, at the world. Somewhere along the way, that anger turned into contempt. That explains some of it," I said. "But it doesn't justify it." "I know." He met my eyes. "I'm in therapy now. Court-ordered, but I'm actually going. Actually trying." We sat in silence. The clock ticked on the wall. The same clock that had been there when he was a boy, when Claire was alive, when this house felt like a home instead of a battlefield. "Is there any chance we could try again?" Chad asked. "Start over?" "No." The word landed hard. He looked like I'd struck him. "What you did wasn't a mistake, Chad. It was a system. Years of exploitation and cruelty. An apology doesn't erase that." "So that's it. We're done forever." "I'm not saying forever," I said. "I'm saying not now. Maybe in 5 years. 10. If you actually change, not because you lost everything and got desperate, but because you choose to be better. If you've made real amends to the other victims. If you become someone worth knowing. Then maybe we talk." His jaw tightened. "That's a long time." "Yes," I said. "It is." At the door he stopped. "The scholarship, the one named after Grandma and Grandpa Sullivan. That's good. What you're doing." "It's not for you," I said calmly. "It's for them, and for people who deserve a second chance." He nodded. Then he walked to his car, a 10-year-old Honda rusted at the edges, and drove away. I closed the door, locked it, and went back to grading papers. That night Rachel called. "Oh, Susan said Chad stopped by." "He did." "How was it?" I thought about that. About the young man who'd sat at my kitchen table looking small and tired. About the son who'd tried to take my house. About the gap between those two versions of the same person. "Complicated," I said. "Did you forgive him?" "No." "Are you going to?" "No, I don't know. Maybe someday. But not because he asked. Only if he earns it." Rachel was quiet for a moment. "That's fair, Dad." "Is it?" "You're not slamming the door forever. You're just not opening it yet. That's healthy." I smiled. "When did you get so wise?" "I learned from you." The next morning, I taught my Sunday philosophy workshop, an informal gathering I'd started last semester. Students came voluntarily to discuss ethics, justice, difficult questions. Today's topic, forgiveness and accountability. "Can you forgive someone without reconciling with them?" a student asked. "Yes," I said. Forgiveness is internal. It's releasing anger so it doesn't consume you. Reconciliation is external. It requires trust. And trust has to be rebuilt. "What if they apologize?" "An apology is a starting point," I said, "not a finish line." Another student raised her hand. "What if it's family? Don't you owe them more grace?" I thought about Chad at my kitchen table. About the years of cruelty wrapped in family obligation. "Family doesn't mean you owe someone access to your life," I said. "Especially if they've used that access to harm you. Love doesn't require you to be a doormat." The room fell quiet. "Boundaries aren't cruelty," I continued. "They're clarity. They say I care about you, but I also care about myself, and I won't sacrifice one for the other. After class, a student named Marcus approached me. Professor Sullivan, can I ask something personal? Sure. Again, that case study we discussed a few weeks ago, the one about the father and the illegal loan. That was you, wasn't it? I paused. The case studies were anonymized, but I'd known some students would figure it out. Yes, I said. Your son visited you yesterday, didn't he? I raised an eyebrow. How did you know? Small campus, people talk. He hesitated. Did you forgive him? No. Will you? I don't know yet. He has to show me he's changed. Words aren't enough. Marcus nodded slowly. My dad was an addict. He got clean 2 years ago. Keeps asking me to let him back in my life. I don't know if I'm ready. And then you're not, I said. And that's okay. Healing happens on your timeline, not his. But what if he's really changed? Then he'll wait, I said. People who've genuinely changed understand that forgiveness isn't owed. It's earned. That night, I sat in the study with a cup of tea. My father's clock ticked. The house settled around me. Chad had come to my door. He'd apologized. He'd asked for a second chance. And I'd said no. Not forever, but not now. Some doors close permanently. Some open slowly. And some just need more time than one conversation can provide. I thought about Aristotle, about virtue as practice, about justice as balance. Chad was practicing maybe, going to therapy, working a regular job, living humbly. But practice takes time. And trust once broken the way he broke, it doesn't heal with a single apology. Maybe in 5 years, maybe in 10, or maybe never. And either way, I would be okay, because my worth wasn't tied to his redemption. My peace didn't depend on his change. I'd spent 2 years believing I was worth $1.50. Now I knew better, and that was enough. Rachel and I cooked Sunday dinner at my house, a tradition we'd kept for over a year, the kind of ritual that made a house feel like home. Tonight it was pasta. Simple. Rachel chopped garlic while I boiled water. Jake, her boyfriend Kevin's son, set the table. It was easy, comfortable, the way family should feel. Ashley asked if she could join us sometime. Rachel said, sliding garlic into the pan. Would that be too weird? I thought about it. Ashley, who'd stood beside Chad at that Father's Day dinner. Ashley, who was now helping victims rebuild their lives. A little weird, I said. But weird isn't always bad. Rachel smiled. So that's a yes. Next month, I said. We'll try it. Jake carried plates to the table. Uncle James, can I ask you something? Sure. Do you ever regret it, exposing everything? I thought about the video call, about 23 families, about Chad's face when the truth came out. Never, I said. The money gave me choices, but speaking up gave me freedom. Rachel stirred the sauce. Most of the $62 million is just sitting there, isn't it? Pretty much, I said. Scholarship fund, your loans, the house renovations, that's it. No mansion, no fancy car. I don't need them. I poured pasta into the colander. I have enough. Jake grinned. That's the most professor answer I've ever heard. We ate at the kitchen table. The same table where Chad had sat months ago asking for a second chance I wasn't ready to give. You know what I realized, Rachel said, twirling spaghetti. That lottery ticket wasn't the jackpot. No. The real jackpot was you finally realizing you mattered. I set down my fork, looked at my daughter. 28 years old, a charge nurse building a life on her own terms. You're right, I said quietly. Jake reached for Rachel's hand. Your dad's kind of a legend on campus. Students talk about his ethics class like it changed their lives. It did change their lives, Rachel said. 17 scholarships and counting. 18 next year, I corrected. We're adding one more. After dinner, we sat on the front porch. The same porch where Chad had stood asking to come in. The same porch where my father used to sit on Sunday evenings watching the neighborhood settle into dusk. "Dad, can I tell you something?" Rachel asked. "Always. I used to be angry that Chad was your son and I was just also your kid. Like he got more of you because he was older, or because he was a boy, or because he was ambitious." "Rachel, let me finish." She smiled. "I'm not angry anymore, because I realized he had your genes, but I have your values, and that matters more." My throat tightened. "You've always had more than my values. You have my heart." She leaned her head on my shoulder. "I know." We sat in silence watching the oak tree my father planted sway in the evening breeze. The tree was older now, stronger. Its roots ran deep, like this house, like this family. "Susan called yesterday," I said. "She and Kevin want to host Thanksgiving this year. Big family dinner." "Are you going to invite Ashley?" "Probably," I said, "if she wants to come." "And Chad?" I thought about that, about the young man in the old Honda, about therapy and apologies and the long road to redemption. "Not this year," I said. "Maybe someday, but not yet." Rachel nodded. "That's fair." Jake went inside to start the dishes. Rachel stayed beside me, her hand in mine. "You taught me something, Dad," she said. "What's that?" "That you can't choose your blood, but you can choose your family," I smiled. "And you can choose yourself." "Absolutely." We sat there in the fading light in the house my parents built, surrounded by people I'd chosen and who'd chosen me back. Susan, who'd helped me see the truth. Kevin and Angela, who'd stood by me. Jake, who treated Rachel like she hung the moon. Ashley, who was trying slowly, carefully, to be better. Richard Patterson, who'd become a friend, not just a lawyer. And Rachel. Always Rachel. The daughter who'd saved me as much as I'd saved her. Inside, the phone rang. I let it go to voicemail. Whoever it was could wait. "Dad," Rachel said. "Yeah. Do you think you'll ever be able to forgive Chad, really forgive him?" I thought about forgiveness, about what it meant, about the difference between releasing anger and restoring trust. "I don't know," I said honestly. "Maybe. If he does the work. If he becomes someone worth forgiving. And if he doesn't, then I'll still be okay." I squeezed her hand. "Because my peace doesn't depend on his redemption. It depends on me choosing truth, choosing myself, choosing this." I gestured at the house, the porch, the neighborhood settling into evening. "This is enough," I said. Rachel smiled. "Yeah, it is." Later that night, after Rachel and Jake left, I sat in the study. My father's clock ticked steadily. The house creaked and settled the way old houses do. I opened my laptop and checked my email, a message from Maria, the scholarship recipient. Subject: "Thank you again, Professor Sullivan. I just finished my first week at Yale's summer program. I'm the only first-gen student in my cohort. It's intimidating, but every time I doubt myself, I remember what you said: you deserve to be fought for. So I'm fighting. For myself. Thank you for showing me how. Maria." I closed the laptop and looked around the study. $62 million. A house paid off. A daughter thriving. Students whose lives I'd changed. And a son who'd tried to destroy me, but instead had given me the means to build something better. I didn't believe in karma. I didn't believe the universe kept score. But I believed in choices, in consequences, in the long, steady work of building a life that mattered. Chad had tried to reduce me to $1.50. Instead, he'd shown me I was worth far more than money could measure. I stood, turned off the desk lamp, and walked out of the study. If you're hearing this story, you're probably wondering, did $100 million change my life? Yes. And no. Let me explain. I'm James Sullivan, 56 years old, philosophy professor at UNC, father of a daughter I'm proud of, owner of a house I love, builder of a life I've chosen. 2 years ago, I stood in Edward Thornton's mansion on Father's Day, holding a crumpled lottery ticket worth $1.50 while 30 people watched my son humiliate me. 2 years ago, I believed I was worth exactly what Chad said I was less than everyone else in that room. Today, I know better. The money changed things. I won't pretend it didn't. It paid off Rachel's nursing school loans, every penny of debt. It established a scholarship fund that's changing 17 lives right now, 18 next year. It protected the house my parents built at 447 Oakwood Drive. It gave me choices I never had before. But here's what the money didn't do. It didn't give me worth. It didn't give me courage. It didn't give me the strength to tell the truth. I could have won $1 billion and still been invisible if I hadn't chosen to stand up. The real jackpot wasn't the money. It was finally realizing I mattered. So if you're listening to this story, if you're someone who feels invisible or small or like you're worth $1.50, I want to tell you 5 things I learned. First, your worth is not negotiable. For years, I let my family treat me like I was worth less. Not because I was less, but because I accepted it. I made myself small so Chad could feel big. I stayed silent so I wouldn't disappoint anyone. I smiled through Edward's insults because I thought that's what family required. But worth doesn't come from other people's approval. It comes from knowing who you are and refusing to shrink for anyone. You are not worth what they say you're worth. You're worth what you know you're worth. And if you don't know yet, start by refusing to accept less. Start by asking yourself, would I let someone treat my daughter this way? Would I let someone treat my best friend this way? If the answer is no, then why are you letting them treat you this way? Second, silence has a cost. Speaking up cost me my son. At least for now, maybe forever. But staying silent was costing me my soul. Every month I made a payment on that illegal loan, I was agreeing that Chad had the right to exploit me. Every dinner at Edward's house, I was agreeing that I deserved to be mocked. Every time I said nothing, I was teaching Rachel that silence was safety. It wasn't. Silence was slow erasure. Speaking up gave me my life back. It gave Rachel permission to speak up for herself. It gave 17 other families the courage to come forward. Was it hard? Yes. Did it cost me? Absolutely. But silence would have cost me more. It would have cost me myself. Third, justice is not revenge. I didn't expose Chad to hurt him. I exposed him to stop him. Revenge is about causing pain. Justice is about revealing truth. When I showed those contracts on the video call, I wasn't trying to humiliate my son. I was trying to protect 23 families from losing everything the way I almost did. Could I have been cruel? Yes. Could I have gloated? Absolutely. But I didn't. Because revenge makes you smaller and justice makes you whole. Fourth, family is a choice. This one's hard. We're taught that family is everything, that blood is thicker than water, that you stand by your family no matter what. But you don't owe loyalty to people who harm you just because you share DNA. Chad is my son, but he's not my family. Not right now, maybe not ever. Rachel is my family. Susan is my family. Kevin, Angela, Jake, they're my family. Ashley slowly and carefully is earning her way back. Richard Patterson is family. They chose me, I chose them. That's what makes it real. Blood doesn't make you family. Love does. Respect does. Showing up does. It's okay to say I love you, but I can't have you in my life. It's okay to say, maybe someday, but not now. Boundaries aren't cruelty, they're clarity. Fifth change is possible, but not guaranteed. Ashley changed. She left Chad, helped his victims, rebuilt her life with integrity. I'm watching her earn her way back. Chad, I don't know yet. He apologized. He's in therapy. He's working at Best Buy instead of running a financial firm. He's lost everything. But words are easy. Actions take time. You can't force people to grow. You can only decide whether to wait while they try. And it's okay to say, I'm not waiting. It's okay to say, I hope you change, but I won't sacrifice my peace to watch. My peace doesn't depend on his redemption. My worth isn't tied to whether he becomes a better person. I'm okay either way. I keep the lottery ticket on my desk, framed behind glass, still crumpled, still marked with the numbers 07 14 21 35 49, Powerball 18. Students ask why I keep it. As a reminder, I say, that the universe doesn't owe me anything, but I owe myself the truth. $1.50. That's what my son thought I was worth. $100 million. That's what the universe handed me by chance. But my actual worth, it's not measured in dollars at all. It's measured in the students I teach, the daughter I raised, the house I protected, the truth I told, the boundaries I set, the life I chose. 2 years ago, if you'd asked me to trade all of this for Chad's approval, I would have said yes without hesitation. Today I know better. There are things worth more than gold, and I'm one of them. You are too. So if you're feeling invisible, if someone in your life is treating you like you're worth $1.50, here's what I want you to know. You don't need a lottery ticket to reclaim your worth. You just need to tell the truth. Your truth. Even if it costs you everything. Even if people walk away. Even if your family doesn't understand. Because the alternative, staying silent, staying small, staying invisible, costs more. It costs you yourself. And you're worth more than that. I'm James Sullivan, 56 years old, philosophy professor, lottery winner, father, survivor. I teach ethics for a living. But the most important lesson I ever learned wasn't in a book. It was this: the real jackpot isn't money. It's knowing your worth and refusing to accept less. I stood in Edward Thornton's mansion 2 years ago, holding a crumpled lottery ticket, feeling like nothing. Today I stand in my father's house, surrounded by people I chose and who chose me back, knowing exactly who I am. And that's worth more than $100 million. That's worth everything. If you take nothing else from this story, take this: you are not what they say you are. You are what you choose to be, and you deserve to be fought for. Even if the person fighting is you, especially if the person fighting is you. The oak tree my father planted 40 years ago sways outside my window. The house he built still stands. The clock he wound every Sunday still ticks. And I'm still here. Still teaching. Still learning. Still choosing. Every single day I choose myself. And that choice, that simple, quiet, powerful choice, is the real jackpot. Not the money. The choice. Choose yourself. You're worth it. Looking back at my story, I see a man who waited too long to speak up, who spent years accepting less than he deserved because he was afraid of losing people who'd already stopped seeing him. Don't be like me in that way. Don't wait for a lottery ticket to know your worth. Don't wait until someone exploits you to set boundaries. Don't wait for rock bottom to choose yourself. Here's what I learned, and what I pray you'll remember. God doesn't measure your value in dollars. He never has. When I felt worthless holding that $1.50 ticket, God saw the same man he'd always seen, worthy of love, dignity, and respect. The world will try to price you. God never will. God gives us wisdom to discern truth from manipulation. For 2 years, I ignored every warning sign because I didn't want to believe my own son would betray me. I prayed, but I didn't listen. God was showing me the truth in Chad's actions. I just didn't want to see it. Trust what God reveals even when it hurts. God honors those who choose integrity over comfort. Standing up cost me my son, at least for now. But staying silent was costing me my soul. When I finally chose truth, God didn't abandon me. He surrounded me with people who saw my worth. Rachel, Susan, even Ashley slowly finding her way back. My lesson: your silence protects no one. Your boundaries honor everyone, especially yourself. Your worth isn't negotiable, and anyone who treats it as such doesn't deserve access to your life. Choose yourself, not selfishly, but faithfully, the way God already chose you. I appreciate you walking through this journey with me. Drop a comment with the number 2 if this story resonated. It helps me know you're here. A gentle reminder: this narrative contains fictional elements designed for reflection and growth. If it's not serving you well, that's completely okay. Find what speaks to your heart. But if it helped, share it with someone who needs to hear it. You're worth more than you know.